Good evening, my name is Camden and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, as you might be able to guess from the title, we are going to be going over some of the books that I anticipate I will be rating 5 stars in 2022. I've divided this list into two different sections. The first section is going to be books that were released in 2021, but for one reason or another, I just didn't get around to reading them last year. And then the second half of the list is going to be books that are coming out in this upcoming year of 2022. I did try to be kind of strategic when putting this list together. I have a few different factors that I used when selecting the books for this list. The first being its average rating on Goodreads. The second being whether or not I have had a positive experience with the author in the past. Third being whether the summary on Goodreads includes a lot of plot points or tropes or characteristics that I typically am very interested in and enjoy. And the last factor just being that X factor of just like my gut feeling that I'm going to really enjoy it. Without further ado, let me just hop into the list. I'm going to start off with the 2021 releases and then I'll move on to the 2022 releases. The first book that I have on the list is Sister Song by Lucy Holland. This is a book that I've talked about on my channel a couple of times already, but just to give you kind of a brief recap, this one is a coming-of-age story but set in ancient Britain, and it has some British folklore and mythology woven into the story as well. The mythology aspect is really what intrigued me on this one. I really love it when books incorporate mythology or like a fairy tale like storytelling. And this one also does have a 4.05 rating on Goodreads, which is not the highest I've ever seen, but is definitely above average for the platform. So I have some high hopes. The next book on my list is The Witch's Heart by Genevieve Gornichek. I hope I pronounced that correctly. The tagline on Goodreads for this one is really what drew me in. It says, when a banished witch falls in love with the legendary trickster Loki, she risks the wrath of the gods in this moving, subversive debut novel that reimagines Norse mythology. So again, we have that mythology aspect that I really gravitate towards, but this one is Norse mythology, which I feel like has been a little underrepresented in books recently. Definitely Greek mythology has kind of taken center stage in the last few years, so I'm really interested to read a book that includes Norse mythology. As long as this book includes some good representation of Loki, I have a feeling this one will be a strong 5-star for me. The third book on my list is Six Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. This is the author of Spin the Dawn, which I am about 50% of the way through right now, and I'm really connecting with the author's writing style. I think she comes up with a lot of really beautiful and unique storylines for her books. Six Crimson Cranes is no different. This follows a princess whose family has been dethroned and her brothers have been turned into cranes. So we are following her throughout the story as she is trying to restore her family to power, as well as transform her siblings back into their human form. I think along the way we're watching her as she falls in love and comes into her own when it comes to her magic. So I think this is going to be a really beautifully crafted, well-told story. This one has a 4.31 rating on Goodreads, which is quite high, so another point in its favor. The next book on my list is Skin of the Sea by Natasha Bowen. I mentioned this book in my recent book haul video. This follows a black main character who is a mermaid, and she is tasked with collecting the souls of those who have drowned and delivering them to the next life. She ends up changing the course of her life when she saved a person who was drowning, which kind of goes completely against the nature of her job, and the story just takes off from there. I have not read anything from this author in the past, and the rating is 3.95, which is not low by any means, but is lower than a lot of the books that are on this list. But I just have a gut feeling that this one is going to be beautifully written and going to have a lot of really good positive representation, so I'm really excited for that one. Like I mentioned in my book haul video, I'm going to try and get to this one in February for Black History Month, so we shall see relatively soon if I am correct. The next book on the list is A History of Wild Places by Shay Earnshaw. This is the author of The Wicked Deep, which I have not read, but I think was pretty popular a couple years ago or so. So I have not had any personal experience with this author, but she does have a pretty good reputation in the YA space, so I'm really excited for this one. This follows a couple of characters who are caught up in a cult, and I believe it follows them as they are kind of coming out from underneath the cult mindset and realizing that the state of the world is maybe not how it was represented to them by their leader, and things are maybe not as bad on the outside as they were led to believe. I think they're also trying to solve some disappearances of people who stumbled across the cult's path or maybe joined the cult for a short time. The cult aspect of this one is really what captivates me and intrigues me, so I'm really excited to read this one soon. I think it's going to be really great, and this one so far has a 4.13 rating on Goodreads, which is quite high. So the last book on my 2021 releases list is The Younger Wife by Sally Hepworth. This is an author that I have had multiple positive experiences with, and her books, The Mother-in-Law and The Good Sister, were in my top favorite books of the year in 2020 and 2021 respectively. So I am really excited to read her new 2021 release. This follows a man who is trying to obtain a divorce from his wife who has dementia so that he can marry a woman who is about the age of his adult children. Obviously, it sounds like it's going to be a lot of drama, and I am very into it. Sally Hepworth writes a lot of really good domestic thriller type books, so I am super interested to read this one from her, and I'm predicting just like the last two, this one's going to be in my favorites of the year. Okay. On to the 2022 releases. The first book I have is The Dream Runners by Sveta Thakrar. This is the author of The Star Daughter, which came out in either 2020 or 2021. I can't quite remember off the top of my head. But that book had a lot of positive feedback surrounding it. She seems to have really interesting plots to her books. This one follows children who have been conscripted into service by their gods to collect human dreams so that the gods can feed off of those dreams. So I think that is a really amazing premise for a story. I'm really excited to read it. I'm not going to include the average rating of books that are upcoming releases, simply because a lot of people will just add books and rate them preemptively without reading them, so I don't want those like excitement reviews to sway the average rating that I'm using. Some of them are genuinely from people who have read the book, early releases, people who are reading arcs and stuff like that, but some people just like do it out of like support. I understand why they do it, but it does really sway early ratings, so until this book has been out for a few months, the average rating on Goodreads is trash and useless. Anyway, the second book on my list is The House Across the Lake by Riley Sagar. I have read most of Riley Sagar's books. I haven't read his latest release and I haven't read his first release, but the 3 books that I have read from him have either gotten a 4 or a 5 star from me, so I'm really interested to read The House Across the Lake. I have a feeling it's going to be a 5 star for me. The next book I have on my list is Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey. This is the author of Upright Women Wanted, which I read and enjoyed in 2021. And this book seems even more up my alley than that one was. This book follows the daughter of a serial killer as she is coming back to the house where her father murdered and buried all of his victims, and her struggle to come to terms with who she is, and maybe she's solving some mystery aspects as well, I'm not really sure. So since I really enjoyed her previous book and really enjoyed the representation she had for people in the LGBTQ community, I have high hopes that this one will make it to my favorites of the year as well. The next book I have on my list is A Magic Steeped in Poison by Judy Lin. This book follows a girl who accidentally brewed the tea that poisoned her mother and her sister. Her mother unfortunately passed away and her sister is kind of on her deathbed, so our main character enters herself into this tea brewing contest that's being held at the palace to try and gain the favor of the ruling family and obtain an antidote for her sister to save her life. I have absolutely no experience with this author. In fact, I think this is her debut novel. However, I really enjoy reading books that have like an interesting skill or talent or hobby that I don't know anything about. I think reading about something that someone else is really passionate about, even if it's like a fictional character in a story, is just really interesting to me. So I'm excited to see what this like tea brewing contest is all about. The next book on my list is You Truly Assumed by Layla Sabrine. This book starts off with an inciting incident when there is a terrorist attack, and that attack is attributed to an Islamic terrorist group. Our main character ends up writing a viral blog post in which she combats Islamophobia and challenges people's assumptions about Islam. And through this blog post, she ends up making some friends, and together they kind of go on this journey of social activism. This book obviously covers a very important and topical issue that we're facing, especially in America right now. Post 9/11, the Islamophobia in our country has been out of control. So I'm really, really excited to read this book. I think it's going to be so valuable of a perspective and very important. So I'm predicting it will be 5 stars. And the last book on this list is The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axie O. This one follows a village who has for years been plagued by floods and violent storms, and the villagers have taken it upon themselves each year to offer a beautiful girl to their sea god in an attempt to appease him. But when our main character ends up getting sacrificed, she takes it upon herself to go on a mission, find the sea god, and confront him for herself. I believe this one has some Korean mythology woven into it, so fingers are crossed that it will be 5 stars. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you made it all the way to the end, you are a real one. Please do all the good things. Click the subscribe button down below and turn on post notifications so you know when I post a new video. I'll give you a hint. It's every Friday. And I hope you have a fabulous week.